Welcome back to our Say What podcast. Here with Tyler and Pastor Phillip.
Yo.
Had started our new series last 2 weeks. We just kind of kicked it off this week though with your Whisper series.
Yep.
Awesome series.
We had a good series, man. It was, I think there was a lot of people walked out and said, "Say what?" Because it was so personal. It was, the whole idea of the Whisper series is to talk about the stuff that you think about, you have an opinion about, but you're not sure if it's right. Maybe you're embarrassed to talk about it. It's an issue inside your home or your family. And so we're just kind of taking the top off of that and saying, okay, nobody else wants to talk about it. I'll talk about it. Y'all listen and then see how.
I think it's going to be great bringing a light to these kind of situations. I mean, everybody deals with at least something that you're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. And a lot of times it's like conversations you have with your wife or your friend, your really close friends, but it's conversations that need to be had and need to be dealt with. And a lot of times you don't know how to deal with them.
No, you don't know how to deal with them. You start throwing around words. This past week was abandonment, loneliness, depression. Now, as you know, you were here, I only got to abandonment. So if you didn't hear the message, you can go now and listen to it on ilovemygrove.com, and it's under media. So it's there, you can listen to it. But then the topics are so big, I set myself up for failure by going 3 right out the gate.
3 heavy hitters.
Yeah, three big ones, but I probably should have went abandonment and then loneliness and then depression. But we're going to cover 2 of them today during our podcast. But when you throw those terminologies out, most people are too maybe ashamed or too embarrassed or maybe don't even know that, hey, that's my deal. You know, It's like, what's wrong, man? Like, why are you that way? Why are you bent that way? Why do you react that way? Why do you talk that way? What are you scared of? And nobody just goes, well, I've got abandonment issues. And if they do, they make a joke about it.
Yeah.
But realistically, when you look at it, there's so many folks that have issues in their life related to that issue. They have things that they're dealing with because of abandonment or loneliness or depression. So
and
we
you think about it, and you don't really like talking about stuff you struggle with. Really,
No.
That's not something you want to talk about. And then when you think about abandonment and loneliness and depression, I mean, you can hear people say that I'm lonely, but it's not very often someone comes out and says I'm depressed or I've been abandoned, and it's hard to put those feelings into words sometimes.
It is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to explain that to people, because then people want to say, oh, no, you're not. You're all right. It's going to be better. Well, that's the last thing you want to hear. I mean, if you're really depressed, and you started noticing it in yourself, and you started noticing that you cannot get out of the funk that you're in, that you wake up in the morning and it's just, there it is again, or it's hopeless, or it's helplessness, or whatever it is, the last thing you want is somebody going, it ain't that bad.
Yeah.
You're all right. Like, what do you have to be depressed about? That's not the answer you're looking for. It's like a real deal for you. Or if you're lonely and your spouse says, what is wrong with you? I don't understand. You're here, but you're not here. The last thing that you want to say to them, unless you want to be up all night talking about it, and then going from point A to point Z in your marriage or your relationship, is to say, well, the real problem is I'm lonely. Because then you just set off a chain of events. So people normally say, nothing, I'm good, and then you deal with it internally, right? And then, most people, you're taught to get over yourself, so you don't say I've got abandonment issues or I've got mom or dad issues or any of that stuff. It's just the way I am. No, it's not. It's the way you've become, but it's not who you are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. We talk about it.
So you went through abandonment. Tried to go through abandonment, loneliness, and depression, but big surprise. Say what? You didn't finish.
Say what? Well, a guy told me yesterday, you don't have many say whats today, do you?
No, I don't.
I can tell. I could tell.
It's so deep, you couldn't really. I mean, everybody was like this,
They were intense. So I know you're not going to make fun of me today, but you did make fun of me because I didn't finish. It's my own fault. But a guy told me yesterday, if people start texting and saying, when's that podcast coming out? So I know you've been looking forward to this. I'm going to get the loneliness in just a second, so just hang with me. But they had said, I got to work. They work at one of the plants, got in, I guess, a bus or something where they take them in. I don't know how that works. But said, hey, this person said, did you make it to church yesterday? And the guy said, no, but I listened online. And then the other person goes, yeah, well, it was good, but again, he didn't finish. He never finishes, and that's true. I don't ever finish. So it's one of those things where you prepare, and then you printed out my notes today.
He had 9 pages of notes, and we talked about being prepared, man. You were prepared for this message.
Yeah.
And with all your message for this series, man, he's been putting a lot of work in. All right, so quickly, summarize abandonment, go through this, what we kind of talked about on Sunday, and we can move forward to those.
Well, real quick, what I would say to you is this, is you need to hear the message. It's about 45, 50 minutes long, and it's about abandonment. We kind of set the text up, Romans 7, talking about the real issue is that you're held hostage by your mind. And so what's happening is you have people who have been held hostage through life because they're injured. They've been injured, and in this particular context, we're talking about abandonment. Now, the Bible says it's afflictions. Affliction is pain. Affliction is distress. It's grief. It's misery. I have an affliction. And the Bible says that God will deliver us from all afflictions. And so then we start talking about what brings me pain, distress, grief, or misery. What leads me saying I'm a miserable person, or I'm living a miserable life, or whatever. And so the first one, my affliction of abandonment. Something has happened in my life that has injured me along the way, whether I was a young kid growing up and my parents divorced, and then I lived with one, visited with the other one, or one left, or I'm adopted, I don't know my parents. Thank God for the parents that I do have, but something inside of me always wondered why, that I was alone, or you grew up in a home that was great, you got married, and then your spouse abandons you, leaves you, or you've got kids that you've raised, and all of a sudden they left you, so they've abandoned you, or death even. So you could be abandoned by death. You weren't looking forward. You didn't know your husband was going to have a heart attack that day. You didn't know she was going to die that day. And it didn't matter what the age was, but it marked you. It hurt you, and now you're injured. Well, you're injured from that pain, distress, misery that has reshaped your life, and you have a mindset held hostage by the hurt, by the affliction that has changed the way that I view life and the way that I interact with it. And so one of the things that we talked about is there's normally 2 different types of reaction to abandonment initially. 2 things that you see, the strongest visible signs are being a person who clings to somebody. Literally, you will have an inordinate amount of attachment to anything breathing. And you know those people. You've met them. And I'm not knocking you if you are that way. If you don't know it about yourself, we know it about you. We've seen it. You attach. And it's okay. It's the way that you've reacted. And literally, they're just saying, make much of me and stick with me. Don't leave me. Kids do that. They come up through divorced homes. They don't know why. Or maybe they had a parent that they were disinterested. They never showed them love. They never congratulated them. They never said they loved you. They never did anything. So they grow up in this home that is just numbed down with just almost an isolation. They're disinterested. The first person that shows interest, boom, they're attached. And so they cling. The second person is the walls person, and it's the person that puts up walls. They hold people at an arm's length. Emotionally, they detached. They never emotionally engage deeply. They emotionally engage to the point that is safe for them. It's a place where they can come to and say, I'm emotionally engaged in this. I'm talking to you. I care about you. I like you, but I'm never going to put myself in that situation again. And if you bail on me, it won't be the first time. And I love you, but I won't ever go there again. And so you see that sometimes with kids that have grown up, homes where a parent wasn't there, or an absent parent, disinterested parent, or divorce, where they weren't with that other parent. And so now they're trying to build a relationship with someone, and they're emotionally detached because they've learned to be detached. And so they won't fully invest emotionally in that person. They can always bail. At any moment, they're willing to bail. And if the relationship doesn't work, they don't seem as hurt about it as anybody else. So we say things like this, can you believe they've already moved on? Yeah, because they weren't ever emotionally involved anyways. They always keep everybody like this, and whoever they moved on to, they're not emotionally involved in them either. So the walls come up, and so they're very difficult to get close to. They care for folks, but at any time, if it doesn't work out, they're okay. So they put those walls up, and then they work through it in different ways, and so it leads to major issues in relationships, and that's really what we were talking about. It leads to insecurities. It leads to people that recreate their childhood later on in life, where they go through this whole thing, and then later on in life they do the exact same thing their parents did. Where did that come from? Or they're emotionally sensitive, and you say something that triggers a reaction. You did something in your marriage that you didn't know your wife was carrying around, and all of a sudden she just, boom, walls come up. And you think, I can't get close to her. What in the world? Or she emotionally breaks down because she's emotionally sensitive to certain things. And so we begin to do that. We begin to talk about that. People can become controlling, have commitment issues, expect perfection. And so these abandonment issues really they affect us in so many ways that really steal people's life. And then you live with pain, you live with trust issues, you live with misery at times. And then the other person deals with it as well. And so we had to talk about abandonment, and there it is. And so I encourage you to go to ilovemcgrove.com, listen to the sermon. It should be on Facebook. Check it out. But I covered all that in about a smooth 50 minutes.
I mean, that's a lot you just dropped on us right there.
That's a ton. If you weren't here on Sunday, you're going, what? If you were, then you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, so the next one was loneliness.
Yeah.
Give us some stuff on loneliness.
Well, loneliness is important because it's the next step to abandonment. We laid this out. We got abandonment, loneliness, depression. Then this Sunday, I'm going to be talking about suicide because they all roll together eventually. There's levels to it. Doesn't mean that if you have abandonment issues, you're going to participate in suicide. And it doesn't mean if you're lonely that you're destined for suicide. And it doesn't mean that if you know someone who committed or has attempted to commit suicide that they're depressed or all these other things. But a lot of times all those things work together.
Yeah.
And so we laid it out. So loneliness is the next level that I wanted to talk about and really kind of bring up. And one of the great quotes that I have, and I'm just going to kind of stick to my notes as I kind of share this with you. So if it makes you uncomfortable watching me read some stuff, just don't look at it, just listen. But John Ortberg said this, and we read him Soul Keeping. Mm-hmm. We did a book study as a church on it, and everybody loved him. But John Ortberg, pastor in Menlo Park, California, he said, although loneliness is something the vast majority of people wrestle with, hardly anyone wants to open it up and address it or openly address it. He said people will readily acknowledge being too busy because that makes them sound important. He says, but to say I'm lonely is kind of like saying I'm a loser, and nobody's going to like a loser. And that's what John Ortberg said. He said one of the reasons that we deal with loneliness and people don't talk about it, you don't normally go out for coffee or lunch with somebody and say, how you doing? And they say, you know what, I'm lonely. Yeah. I mean, how many times a week do you hear that come from somebody? You don't. Can you see the effects of loneliness? Absolutely. Can you see people that you would say, I bet they're lonely? For sure. And here's the big thing about loneliness, is loneliness we oftentimes think is just for single people or just for people who don't have family. But loneliness strikes not just single people and people that don't have family. In fact, sometimes people that are on their own are the most not lonely people that you know. They've created an environment where they can, I'm self-sufficient. I don't want to be around anybody. I'm not lonely at all. I'm living a life. That's why some guys like to get out and go trout fishing way back in the woods and find a stream, and there's not a sound, a peep, nothing going on, just them and water running, and they're not lonely at all. They're living life.
Yeah.
But then there's a bunch of people that can be in a crowded room, sitting with us on Sunday, at work today, in their home tonight, sitting on the couch with somebody, kids running around the house, it's loud, and inside their soul, they're dying because they're lonely. That's what Paul said, who will save me from this thing that is killing me. Now, Pastor Matthias, that I read some and heard some of him talking, he described it excellent. And he was talking about 1 Corinthians chapter 10, 13, that the Bible says there's no temptation that has overtaken you, but such that it's common, and Christ gives you a way out. And he was talking about the temptation of loneliness. That is, there's a temptation there that you have to walk through. And he says there are different types of loneliness. Loneliness that comes upon us through circumstances. Loneliness that comes upon us through sin and disobedience. Loneliness that is accompanied that accompanies our courage or obedience. You do the right thing. You're courageous, and it's a lonely place to be. You're the guy that has to do it. I remember when I was a little boy, there was me and my cousin and my brother. We ran around. We were young, and there was just the three of us. Anytime something wrong happened, whether we blew up the spray paint can and covered our neighbor, ran a four-wheeler into the truck, woke our uncle up who was working night shift, whatever it was. Whenever it came time to have to fess up and go deal with it, those two would always say, Philip, you go tell him. Philip, you go tell. You go tell. Who's going to tell? You go tell. That was a lonely walk because between what had happened and who I had to tell was just me. That's lonely. And so sometimes in life it's not that, but you're being courageous today and you're lonely, man. Or you're lonely because you're being obedient to God. God's got you on a walk that you're obeying and you don't understand it, or maybe you do understand it, or you're trying to lead your family, or you're at home now, you're trying to get your husband and your kids plugged into church. He won't get up and go with you. He's not a believer. He thinks it's okay if you want to take the kids, but it's lonely on Sunday mornings on that drive to church because you're doing it alone. And the kids want to know where their daddy is, and you don't have the answers for them, and you're just being obedient to what God's calling you to do, but you're lonely. And so he goes on and he says, there's more specific categories: the loneliness of fear, of being afraid, the loneliness of being anger, kind of like the guy that blows up in his living room, says stuff that he wishes he hadn't. Now he's isolated himself. He walks out of the room and he feels guilty and shame for what he did. He's lonely because there's nobody going to come up and go, good job. She got the point that time. That's good right there. Way to throw that dish across the room and break it for your kids. Good shot. You're going to be lonely now. Now you're down in your workshop going, I'm an idiot and I shouldn't have done that and I'm lonely. So there's that kind of loneliness. There's the loneliness of divorce, loneliness of loss, loss of job, home, a loved one, the loneliness of death, of grief, of rejection, traveling, of being a new Christian, being new at a job, being new at a place, a state, being a new guy. There's the loneliness of widowhood, of being single, of being in a loveless marriage, being alone in dating. There's loneliness that goes on, and there's different categories of it. And when you start to define it that way, you start to look at it, there's a lot of people, you're listening to me today, or you're going to share this with somebody, you're lonely. You're lonely.
Yeah.
And somebody like me is going to come in on a Sunday and go, let's talk about loneliness, because I'm going to address the issue that your husband wants. I'm going to address the issue that your wife wants, or your kids want, or mom and dad want, or just life want. We need to talk about you being lonely. Now, the Bible talks about it several ways. He says, your God, the Lord himself, will be with you. He will not fail you or abandon you. So when you start looking at Scripture in Deuteronomy 31:6, God says, I won't abandon you, right? And I won't leave you, right? You're not lonely. Yeah, I am. He's with you, right? That's still hard. He's the invisible God around me that I can't see. He's still home.
It's hard to think about that, like when you list off those things when you're going through that, when you're the new person, or you're being courageous, or all those things that you just listed being lonely. When you're in that moment and you feel loneliness and you're like, I don't have anybody. It's hard to think about, I have God right here with me, you know?
You go through, I picked on marriages a lot just because it's easier to talk about abandonment issues in the marriage, because that's where you end up seeing them the most. Not all the time, but a lot. But let's use marriage again. I'll just pick on the married people. So don't feel like I'm picking on you. I'm not, but I'm using it as an illustration. You go through a bad breakup. You've invested your life. You love somebody. You care for them, and you go home, and she's not there, and she's not texting, and she's not talking to you, and she's talking to everybody else. She's withdrawn. She leaves. She don't want to have anything to do with you. You can't get through to her, and you find yourself sitting alone in your home. You're a believer and you know Christ, but in that moment you feel like nobody is there. And the preacher says, we're going to pray for you, and they say time will heal everything and God will get you through it. But when you're in that moment, sitting alone by yourself in a house or at work, and you're standing at the screen or whatever, you're alone. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what to do with yourself. And so now you obsess about it, and if you don't deal with it, you're going to explode and say stuff you wish you hadn't. You're going to go out for revenge because you just can't get it off your mind. But the truth of the matter is you're lonely. And so when we say that, it is hard to say, well, God's with me. Well, where is he? Yeah. You know, he's the one that's never left you nor forsaken you. I don't feel him. Psalm 91:5 says, when they call to me, I will answer them. When they are in trouble, I will be with them. Psalm 94:17 says, if the Lord had not helped me, I would have gone quickly to the land of silence. That's what David said. If he hadn't helped me, I was headed to the land of silence. And then he said, I am falling, but your constant love, oh Lord, help me out. That's what God does. You're falling, and you know you're falling. And I've been there. I mean, it's free fall, man, and you're lonely, and God's constant love lifts you up. The reason God stay constant is because the first 6 months you don't feel it.
Yeah. It's always
But it's there.
Yeah.
And then finally one day you wake up and you go, I'm gonna survive. I don't know how, but I am. What gave you that courage? He's with me. He's constant. So let me give you some facts about loneliness. Okay? Some things that you need to know about loneliness, and this isn't, I didn't make this up. Psychology Today helped me with this. Loneliness does not depend on how many friends or relationships you have. Loneliness depends on the subjective quality of those relationships, emotionally, socially connected or disconnected from those relationships. So it doesn't matter how many friends you have, it's the perception of how deep this friendship is. So you can take somebody that's got all these friends, and you might say something like, I've got all kinds of friends, but I have nobody for me. And what is that? It's how you perceive that connectedness and deep connectedness, right? Or disconnectedness. So it's not a matter, loneliness isn't about how many friends you do or don't have. Number 2 is this: more than 60% of lonely people are married.
That's crazy.
So when you start saying who are the lonely people, over 60% of them are in marriages. And by the way, we don't just have single people listen to this podcast.
Why is that, you think?
Because I think what happens is you get married. When you get married, you don't get married lonely. You're not putting all this money, time, energy into this marriage. Unless something's happened and you're afraid to back out, that's a possibility. But those are small possibilities. There's people like that you're in a marriage and you know you should have just not done it, but you did it anyways or whatever. But for most people, the wedding day comes. You were at a wedding this weekend. It was a party. Everybody's excited. They don't leave the wedding, head off to the honeymoon and go, I'm so lonely. Well, we got each other. They don't do that. So what happens is over time, that relationship begins to take advantage of one another. You begin to resent one another. You begin to take each other for granted. And emotionally, I begin to detach. Or I begin to withdraw. The walls begin to go up. So now, emotionally, I'm not being fulfilled. She doesn't talk to me the way that she used to. She don't appreciate me the way that she used to. He doesn't come over and hold my hand like he used to. He doesn't say sweet things to me like he used to. So you start to do this. And then over time, you go into this cocoon to protect yourself. Kids come, and now she's more focused on the kids than she is on you, or he's more worried about coaching the baseball team than he is being your husband. And so you withdraw and you shut down so that you don't get hurt because it's all for the kids, or it's all, we just got to stay in the marriage. And before you know it, you wake up one day and you go, I'm so lonely I can't see straight.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's like you're tired. You better wake up.
I know.
I mean, this is a podcast.
Yeah.
So it happens, you know. You get there. So here's what: loneliness distorts our perception of our relationships. So what happens is it distorts the perception of your relationship. So you're lonely. So I'm lonely at home. Let's say I'm lonely in my marriage. I come to work. I'm lonely there too. And you're happy and you're living life, and she's happy and she's living life. So my relationships are distorted now because internally I'm lonely. So you know what I start doing? I start withdrawing. Now I start withdrawing from everybody. Now I start going more and more inside that cocoon inside of me because I'm lonely. And I start talking to myself. I start listening to myself. And I start cutting everybody else out because my perception is I'm so lonely, I don't have anybody.
I think a lot of times too, you think about the other people that you're pulling away from, they're not thinking that way. They're thinking they're still right there with you, but they don't know.
And you know what the interesting thing is many times when you begin, if you're the lonely one, you start to withdraw, and then you say this, they didn't even care. They didn't even come after me. They didn't ask me what was wrong. Here's why. Because when you start to withdraw in loneliness, you are actually pushing other people away, and people don't know what to do with it. So you're distancing yourself, and people can see the distancing. You've seen it before. I've seen it with people. Then we sit around, we know them, we love them, and we go, what are we going to do? And you go, I don't know. How are we going to, well, we need to talk to them. Okay, well, I'll talk to them. So I talk to them. They don't change, and they keep distancing because now it's weird for them. It's weird for us. And you have withdrawn, and they've pushed you away, and they didn't mean to, but as a lonely person, we blame them. But here's what happened. What initiated that was the fact that you were lonely and you didn't address your loneliness, so your perception of your relationships changed. You begin to withdraw. They didn't know how to fix you, so they withdrew too.
Yeah.
Withdrew too.
They just push people away.
Yeah, man. And it's a natural cycle. So you go, what happened to them? I don't know, man. They just changed. But I ain't got time for that, you know? And I'm notorious for that. People start pulling it back away from me. And now I've got to chase you. But I'm notorious for going, no, I'm not. They withdrew from me. I'm not going to chase them. And a lonely person will want you to continue to pursue because it makes them feel better.
Makes them feel wanted.
Yeah. But even when they get you back, you're still lonely. So you do it again. And eventually, you create this cycle. So some people, I want to say this to you, if you're lonely today, your friends may not have left you. You left them. They didn't know what to do with you. They didn't know how to handle you. So it started somewhere else. So you started withdrawing, and now you're gone. And you're expecting them to come fix something, watch, that you initiated and started. They can't fix it because even when they come to you and go, hey, we miss you. No, you don't. You didn't care last week. Where you been? And then here we are again. And the real problem is you're lonely. And you're going to have to address the issue of loneliness. And it's funny how when you address that and you begin to go, I am, and you begin to battle it, which we'll talk about, it changes your perception of those relationships. Watch this. Loneliness is contagious in social networks, what we just talked about. If you think about it, here's what people say. Man, I'll tell you what, they just left me out in the cold, man. You know where that mentality comes from? Is the idea of warmth of a group. So if you say they left me out in the cold, what they said was they closed ranks, they had this group, everybody's staying warm, and they left me out. Yeah? Yeah. Well, what you find out, and I'm going to show you this in just a minute, but in social networks, at work, at home, you start detaching, guess what happens? The group closes up around you with you on the outside, and that's really what it feels like. They see it, and they don't know what to do, so they just close around it, and now you're out in the cold. You just left me out in the cold, man. You don't care nothing about me. Did you know that that's a true statement? You started withdrawing, they just closed up because they didn't know what to do with you. You said you were out in the cold. Listen to this. Loneliness actually has an impact on your body. Right? What is it? You literally feel colder. You ask people when they feel the loneliness, and they have a concept of the room, even itself, feeling colder than what it is. This whole idea of being separated from the group is real. It affects your body. So your skin is colder. It doesn't mean if you're sitting there and going, I'm freezing to death. It doesn't mean you're lonely. You get to really be freezing to death. But it has an effect on your body. And so your body starts to react. In fact, your body feels like it's under attack when you're dealing with loneliness. And loneliness increases your blood pressure and your cholesterol, and it activates your physical and psychological stress responses. That's what loneliness does. Did you know that? It makes your cholesterol go up. It makes your blood pressure go up. So you can be sitting in a room by yourself and you go, I don't know why my blood pressure is so high. It's because you're lonely and you don't have anybody, and you have been battling that mentally so much that your body has reacted to it. And now your body is under a constant state of stress. I'm by myself, I'm by myself, I'm by myself. You ever heard somebody say this? They died of loneliness. You ever heard that? Mm-hmm. You take somebody that's been married for a long time, been married 65 years, and he dies. It's amazing how shortly thereafter she follows suit. And you say, what happened? They died of loneliness. Can people really do that? Yes, sir. Because loneliness is unlike abandonment. Abandonment affects your behavioral understanding, walls and cleaning. Loneliness affects your body. My body is in a constant state of stress because I feel abandoned and alone and by myself. So I'm colder, the room's colder, my cholesterol's climbing, my blood pressure's shooting up, my physical body thinks it's under attack. Listen to this. You have chronic loneliness. Chronic loneliness increases your risk for cardiovascular disease. My blood pressure is pumping so high and my cholesterol is high because I'm lonely. Literally, it's killing my heart.
That's tough.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
You're lonely and you start talking about, my heart hurts, I'm lonely, I've got a broken heart. Literally, you are dying of a broken heart. Isn't that messed up? It's messed up, but it's true. Constant unrelenting stress has an effect on your heart. And loneliness suppresses the functioning of our immune system. So literally, if you're lonely, you find lonely people are sick more often. Because your immune system, now your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your heart's, you're being affected. It's affected. You're sick more. Right? I don't know why I'm sick all the time. Maybe that's it. Loneliness, watch this, loneliness is as dangerous as smoking. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
But I studied it. Loneliness is as dangerous as smoking. Ma'am, you're in that marriage and you're dying of loneliness. It's real. It is so real. And I'm talking to you today. If you were here on Sunday and I was preaching this message, it would be for you. We need to battle it because it's just as dangerous on your body as smoking is. It's having an effect on you. But sir, I'm telling you, you can't keep running from it because it is affecting you. And you're going to get up one day and go to work and your heart's going to say, that's it. It's too much. And it's done. I wrote this in my notes. Chronic loneliness increases our risk of early death by 14%.
It's a huge percent. 14%.
Right? We were just talking about how many people were reaching our community based on population. And it was a major percent, but that's a huge percent. When you look at 14%, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I told you you had a 10% chance of living longer, would you take it? You'd say, yeah, dude, 10%, yeah. 14% chance you're going to die earlier. Why? They're lonely. So, how do we battle loneliness? Right?
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, but you're in
You
luck.
got to battle it, though, because all this...
We do have to battle it.
That's serious stuff.
We do have to battle it. And here's what I'm going to say. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to finish up with loneliness, and we're going to end this podcast today. And then we are going to do another podcast that we will have up on Thursday for depression and despondency. Are you down with that?
Yeah, that's good.
So I told you some weeks we wouldn't have a podcast, some weeks we'll have more than one, and this is going to be more than one because we need to wrap this up. But here's how we battle loneliness. Number one, you got to get out of your mind. The Bible says to renew your mind. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of it. And so your mind, everything starts with a thought. So you're going to have to get out of there. I'm lonely because I ain't got nobody. I'm lonely because this happened to me. So we got to get out of our mind. If you're battling, the first place we got to go is go, okay, I know I'm lonely and I need to fight back. My friends, I feel distance from my friends. Well, in your mind, you're thinking they did something to you. It wasn't them, you did it. You started withdrawing. So let's get out of your mind. Number two is you got to connect with people for support. Loneliness naturally drives you away to withdraw or to have walls. So if you know you're lonely, you can't. You got to connect.
Yeah. Would you say those two go hand in hand? Getting out of your mind and then connecting with others?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're just listening to yourself, then you're going to not be having room to listen to anybody else. So you're lonely, and you're sharing with me how bad your day is and how bad it is, and all this stuff. And I go, Tyler, it's going to be good, man. I love you. Come hang out with us. No, better not. We're going to play basketball. No, I got stuff to do. No, you don't.
Right.
You're lonely. The reason that you can play ball is because you ain't doing nothing else. So come on. So stop, get out of your mind, let's go and connect with people. Lonely people withdraw. They withdraw from their spouses. They withdraw from their children. They withdraw from work. They go from point A to point B to do what they have to, and they never make a good relationship in the process because they're lonely. Number three is this: allow people around you in. Let people in. Lonely people not only withdraw, but they don't let anybody in. They have major trust issues. And so if you're with your children, let them into your life. If you're with your spouse, let them into your life. Let your friends in. You know, I can't complain about being lonely if me and you're having lunch together, but I don't ever tell you nothing about me.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you ask me and I just don't ever tell you. I just don't answer it the way I should. So you've got to let people in. Here's one: volunteer. Go do something for somebody else. Maybe you're lonely because you're just so caught up in your own mind, listening to your own self, withdrawn from everyone else, not trusting anybody. You're so consumed with you. And you say, well, now you sound like you're making me the bad guy. I'm not making you the bad guy. But what I'm saying is, if you want to bust through loneliness, focus on somebody else. Take that loneliness that you have and go cut up firewood and deliver it to these people that's going to be cold this winter.
I think a lot of time when you start doing that, and you let people in, you trust people, you start volunteering, you start going out, and you start opening up to people, you're going to find people that are struggling with the same issues you're struggling with.
Or worse.
Yeah.
So let's say you're lonely. You come to church, you go, hey, Phillip, listen, I heard your podcast, and I've been going to church at the Grove. I'm lonely, but you know what I like to do is, do you know people in the hospital? Because I like to go visit them. I got time Tuesday after work. I go, yeah, I know a couple of people, and I give you a couple of names. And you get in your car like you always do, by yourself like you always are, going someplace knowing nobody like you never do, and you walk in, you sit down in a hospital room with someone that's dying of cancer, and all of a sudden, I'm not so lonely.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm having a conversation, and it changes my perspective.
Yeah.
And we have to do that sometimes to bust out of this hostage keeping that my mind. Remember this: loneliness is real. But loneliness is also a tool that the enemy uses to push you so far back into a corner that ultimately you end up in depression. Now remember, he came to kill, steal, and destroy. I just told you what loneliness will do to your body. You tell me where it comes from.
That's strong.
Right? The enemy backs you so far into loneliness that now he has decreased your chance for a long life by 14%. You tell me who the author of that is.
And it keeps you from doing what God's called you to do. Because you're constantly putting up walls, you're constantly pushing people away, you're constantly in your own head instead of going and serving and helping and be there for others.
You're sarcastic, you're cynical, you don't trust anybody, and in fact, when you begin to see somebody that's living life and doing well, you don't like them.
Yeah.
You don't like them because there's something wrong with them because they got what you don't have. And the enemy keeps using that to push you further and further and further, and then he takes your life 14% earlier than he does mine. Right? Or you have a heart attack. So loneliness isn't something you can play with. The loneliness isn't something that you can just be okay with. And it may be chronic loneliness that you have to battle. So it may be a highs and lows because that's just kind of way you're bent, and that's your DNA, and that's just where you are. But you have to push through that because you're literally, the enemy is affecting your life. Here's one: get out of the house. If you're lonely, don't just go to work and go home. Go do something. Go work out. Run, walk, jog. Hey, here's one. Go stand out in the sun. Did you know that just being out in sunlight increases your ability to be happy?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why. Why do you think when we hit January and February, everybody walking around here like zombies? We hadn't seen the sun what seems like 13 years, and we're just like, But when March 1st comes, everybody's mentality changes because I know I'm going to wake up one morning, it's still going to be cold and crisp, but that sun's going to come through them clouds, and everything is better. Get out of the house, man. Go do something. Join a club. Get a hobby. And here's the last two, and I'll be done. Get to know yourself. If you're going to be isolated in loneliness, use it wisely. Instead of focusing on yourself while you're lonely, focus on God. And let God show you who you are. So if I'm going to spend a season of loneliness, trying to do what I've been talking about, but I'm lonely, instead of sitting in my house going, I'm so lonely, people, I don't like people, but they don't like me, I'm going to say, who am I? What am I wired for? What do I like to do? What do I love? If I weren't lonely, what would I be doing? If people knew me, they know this. Get to know yourself. And get to know yourself through God. Right? And then here's the last one is this. Allow Christ to fill the need in your life of loneliness that you're expecting somebody else to fill. You want to help yourself out with loneliness? Let Christ fill that need instead of yourself. Or expecting somebody else to fill it. So you're asking an imperfect person to come in and make you feel perfect, to fix my life. And an imperfect person can't do that. That's why you're lonely. Then you put your trust in somebody, they fail you, you're lonely again. But if we can trust Christ first and let Him fill that up, and so that I'm very self-confident, I'm okay, I'm good, my mind is better, I'm not lonely, I'm not depending on you to make much of me, I'm not depending on this, I'm good. And so I go through life. Then it makes it that much easier when I finally do meet somebody that can't make me, can't fill that spot that God can, but man, they absolutely can accentuate it and make it better. Right? So loneliness is a real deal. I didn't get to despondency, so don't worry about it. Depression. It's not that I can't finish the message. It's just too much stuff.
It's a bunch of stuff. It is. If you're dealing with any of this, you're dealing with abandonment, depression, or loneliness, any of these issues that we're going to be going through for next week, man, if you have questions, you can email them to info@ilovemygrove.com, and we'll do our best to try to answer them for you guys. Do everything we can.
Or check us out at one of our services. I'll be speaking tomorrow night here at the Kingston campus at 6:30, and I'm going to get into all this too during that time. And then Thursday we'll have another podcast talking about depression. And the truth of the matter is, at some point in my life, I've dealt with all these different issues, and I may again. And so you're not abnormal. You're not weird. It's just life, but let's deal with it. We'd love to help you. So thank you for joining us for Say What App. We'll have more for you on Thursday. and another podcast coming. So,
Say What podcast?
Say What podcast, Whisper
Not
series. See you. Bye.
I love